My name's Richard Brown. I'm the Minister of Environment, Energy and Forestry. It's a great department. We've combined basically the resources for energy under one roof, and we've also put the Department of Environment here also to control the two. Right. One of our main objectives here is to, first of all, is to provide cheap renewable energy to the residents of Prince Edward Island. We have the highest energy cost in Canada, and it's affecting both our economy, and we're working towards replacing some of our dirty energy with clean energy, and we're doing a tremendous job in that area. And just in terms of wind, with the new contract that's going out, we will be up to 25% of our wind, of our energy needs, will be based on wind. And if you take it one step further, that's our peak load, but about 50 to 70% of our base load will be coming from wind also, which is great.
So that just to step back for 1 second, that combination of environment, energy, and forestry. I mean, I know that when I grew up, you heard the word environment, you thought of wolves, like it was something outside. It was like the outdoors where you went.
Yes.
And even like when you come into this department, you see there's a cormorant there, yeah. And I think that's historically in the province that's how it was something else.
Yeah.
And it seems as though when you stick energy and forestry and you mix it all together, you're really looking at the whole system. So you're looking at what's the demand side, what's the supply side, how do they relate to one another, and how does it affect the environment? Is that accurate?
Yeah, Department of Environment by itself was basically just a regulatory department and issued regulations and enforced regulations. And where we thought of it, we should be demonstrating government's efforts here in terms of the environment and what we can do. One of our biggest environmental issues today, and especially in climate change, is global warming, and most of that problem is from the generation of heat and electricity. So that's where we combine the departments to say, demonstrate good environmental sustainable development through the Department of Environment with our energy needs, and with biomass too. And we're looking at biomass energy, and there's an economy in itself there. Like one of the dreams we have is, instead of oil trucks running up and down the road, we have wood chip trucks running up and down the road. And we're looking at going with a tender across Prince Edward Island for all government-owned buildings to give out to someone a contract that would supply us BTU heat in each of our facilities. And one of the things we're doing there is we're changing our building designs to make sure that each building has a quick coupler system to put in a wood chip burner and the space inside the facility or next to the facility to hook up. And that's one of the things we're doing, and we have a few projects right now that's going great.
So if you look at, and you touched on this earlier, if you look at the whole energy profile of Prince Edward Island, I mean, we get still a large percentage of our electricity is coming from off island. Some
Yes.
of that's renewable, some of that's nuclear, some of that's not renewable. We generate some of it here, and then we get now an increasing proportion from the wind. And then if you look at the home and the commercial heating side, that's where that's almost all oil. There's some biomass there now, but
Yeah,
the
a very
vast
small amount
proportion of it.
Yeah.
And so we're both vulnerable, as we know from last year. We're vulnerable to world oil prices, but we're also generating our heat in probably the least energy efficient way in many cases. So do you see, knowing what you know now about the bigger profile, and knowing that we have to reduce it somehow, how are we going to do that in a bigger way? I mean, not necessarily specific projects, but do you see it possible to go down by a significant percentage on both of those sides, the electricity and the home energy or the commercial energy?
Yeah, we're working extremely hard, to bring down energy cost and to make it sustainable and green. One of the things we've been trying to work with both Newfoundland and Quebec is to get its green power to Prince Edward Island, and we're working extremely hard with them. They have the Churchill Falls, which is great power, great affordable power, and it's non-carbon generating, so we want some of it, and we're continuing to work with those utilities in order to get it. I'm happy to see that we have a 20 megawatt stake in Dalhousie, which is an oil emulsion burning plant. That's going to be shut down in this deal, and I'm glad to see that, because it was expensive power and dirty power, which was a double whammy for me. It was dirty and expensive. So if we can get renewable and cheap, which is better for us.
Do you see the primary way of reacting to this on the supply side or the demand side, or is it sort of a mix of both?
Well, we're working on both sides here. On the both on demand on the demand side, when the biggest thing I learned when I was in Denmark was, the smart grid. Once we get the smart grid, and there's very smart people working on the development of this smart grid, and I think it's a reality. Like people shrug their shoulders at the first and say, a smart grid, how can you have that? Where you'll charge your car at night and daytime it'll draw upon that battery. People are sitting back and saying that'll never happen. I think we're pretty close to something breaking, in that area, and we have to do it. The faster we get there, the better. So I can see the smart grid working. The new technologies that are coming out, the wind turbines are getting more and more efficient every day. And we have tidal power we're looking at. We're not specifically in Prince Edward Island, but Nova Scotia is. And in solar, there's great potential there. And I think if you combine all that together and base load it against hydro, I think we have a great smart grid in place there. We're looking at replacing. We're looking at making a law that basically bans anything that's not energy efficient. We had a piece of legislation done about 15 years ago, but it was never proclaimed. Only energy efficient equipment or appliances would be sold in Prince Edward Island. We're looking at doing that again.
Okay.
And the demand side is there. The biggest challenge there is the grid itself and the billing system. Someone getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning to do their laundry doesn't pay. They're not going to do it. I was with the Charlottetown Water Commission. That talk was done back then. We give them a cheaper water rate at night, or meter them and all that. It just the inconvenience of it is not there. But if we can charge our cars at night or our vehicles at night, or charge up our heating systems at night when the power is cheap, and then expend it during the day, is great. Like we have one company right now on Prince Edward Island here that has a windmill, 2 windmills, one company. He has in-floor heating, and he has thermal heating, geothermal heating. He uses a windmill to pump the geothermal up. It heats his floor up early, when the wind's blowing. He gets his floor temperature up, and that's a good way to store that energy during the day. We have another. We just built we're in partnership with a company in a freezer, and that's an excellent way to store it. Like a freezer, for example, a big freezer can go to about 8, 9, 10, 11 hours without needing to be recharged or recooled down, and that's a great place to store
it's almost
energy.
like a battery
and that's basically the way we describe it. Like these kind of facilities, and we're identifying these facilities and saying, okay, can the energy be, it doesn't have to be constant, and it can flow with the wind. Those are the kind of facilities we are targeting right now to say, can we get them off? Can we lower their demand on the grid system and on the dirty fuels and get them on to wind? And there's a lot of potential out there. Potato barns, for example, you get them a certain temperature, they can go a while without needing a recharge, and by that time we can use the
So when you talk about the smart grid, really what you're talking about is sort of almost time shifting in the way we do with our VCRs or TVs. So you're taking, okay, here's where the energy is cheapest, here's where the demand is greatest. How can we flatten out that curve then?
And we're picking out projects that freezers, potato warehouses, things like that can be used on off-peak hours, or it can be used. They don't need a constant flow of power 24 hours a day, and we're saying, okay, if we can do that, and the one particular company, we said, we'll heat, the building will be heated when the wind's blowing. When it's not blowing, it'll be we'll be drawing the heat from the floor that's already there.
Right.
And we're getting high efficiencies there.
Now, do you think on the residential side, I think one of the things, people who were born in the 60s or before went through the energy crisis in the 70s, and I think a lot of the feeling we have inside, in terms of energy conservation, is that we had to sort of turn off the lights and turn down the thermostat, and so we had to be colder and darker, and it wasn't so much fun necessarily. Do you think that we need, maybe not to that extent, do we need sort of residential behavior change, or can we get where we need to go? Can we keep using as much energy as we're using now, just using it either from different sources or in a smarter way?
We have all utilities in Canada right now have to put demand side management plans in place, and I'm going to be upfront. It's a very difficult task to do on a residential level. It's everybody was going with the LED lights last year, and it's, you know, the consumer says, you know, we'll do it, but it's not Christmas, right. And you know, they're tending to go back. So there's a number of things that are going to be tried, and hopefully I see some potential in reducing residential rates, but it's going to be hard. The biggest area I think we're going to get is on electric cars. I think that's going to be a phenomenal thing there, when people will charge their cars at night and use them during the day and recharge them at night. Another thing, you know, in terms of storing heat at an off-peak time and reusing it on the on-peak time, I think there's a great potential there. Right now, some provinces and some states are paying to get rid of their electricity because, you know, they have the turbines turning and they have a generation happening, and they can't load it into the system, and no one will take it, so they have to basically pay people to take it just to make sure that their generators keep going. So, you know, there's times where we can do that, and that's where the smart grids, smart home, smart business comes into place.
Now, I'm looking at the larger picture again for a second.
Sure.
In the climate change strategy document that your government came out with last year, you talk about, you go back to the New England governors meeting where there was a sort of a regional commitment to 10% reduction in greenhouse gases, and then there's a longer term commitment, I think, to 75 to 80% to 85% by 2050. If you look at where we are now compared to, let's say, where we were when those documents were signed, we're basically flatlining. I mean, we're not necessarily going up, but we're not necessarily going down either. If you sort of draw the line to 2050, let's say we're not necessarily on track right now.
No, we're not on track.
Do you have any sense of how much more dramatic we're going to have to get in terms of, not again sort of denying ourselves things, but how much more, you know, along the lines of the things you're going to talk about? Are we going to have to double or triple or quadruple that kind of work?
We're going to have to do different things. I think right now everybody's waiting for a breakthrough technology to come out in terms of energy storage or energy use or energy efficiency. And a lot of people are working on it, you know, the smart grid being one and storage technology being the other. And we're all hoping for that. And I think time's running out for that. When it does run out, we're going to have to start reducing our demand or getting more renewable energy from other sources, you know, in particular more hydroelectric power. Look, Canada is, I'm told, 75% of our power is generated by hydro. Right. You know, we're one of the best countries in the world in terms of our electricity being generated by a non-emitting resource, and we have a great advantage there, and we have to maybe use more of it, and we're looking at that. But out to 2050, it's a challenge. It's going to be a tremendous challenge, and I guess we're all sitting back waiting for a breakthrough technology to occur. Right. But as time clicks on and the technology doesn't come along, the decisions are going to have to be put in place to start reducing, because you just can't.
On the other side of this equation, I mean, if you look at the amount of greenhouse gases that PEI is responsible for, it's 0.3% in terms of the country. So even if we cut ours in half, in terms of the bigger global picture, it's not going to have any effect practically. It's going to maybe have an effect in terms of leadership, but flip that over, I think we're particularly more vulnerable than other jurisdictions, being an island made out of sandstone, and having an agricultural economy, and also being more reliant on you know, offshore sources of energy. You add that all up, and I think we have you know, if you compare us to small town Ontario, we're more vulnerable to the effects of climate change.
Oh yeah, we're on the edge. We're at the very edge of it. We're going to see the effects of climate change far before a lot of other places. But I'm also told, you know, I did mention it at a meeting I was at. You know, we could be the canary of climate change. And somebody said, well, no, I think the prairies may be, because they'll dry up a lot quicker before your water gets higher. Right. And there's those discussions going on.
Of course, in that story, the canary dies. So yes. Maybe we don't want to be the canary.
No, and you know, we're looking at, you know, we want to build a climate change center to study it. We're working with UPEI now to see what we can do in terms of that, in terms of the university. We are a very, very small emitter. We are a very, very small contributor, but we still contribute. So we have to do our part in order not to be said, well, you're out here talking about it and you're not doing anything about it, so why are you asking me to do something about it when you're not doing nothing about it?
Now, do you think, would you go further to say that not only is a responsibility to do our part, but both because, well, I guess for two reasons, both because we're going to be more vulnerable to it, and because we have a small jurisdiction with, sort of in a per capita way, more resources, at least more brain resources.
Yeah.
Do we have a responsibility to go out there to the country, or maybe the region or the world, and be leaders in this? Not only do the stuff, but talk about the fact that we've done this stuff.
Sure. Well, we are leaders. PEI doesn't have to take a backseat to anyone here in terms of climate change and in terms of doing things to reduce, our greenhouse gas emissions. For example, our energy from waste plant. We have a tremendous plant in place there that heats downtown Charlottetown. There's a tremendous amount of scrubbers on it. The emissions are virtually zero at that plant. And when I was in Denmark, I saw other plants running the same way. So there's opportunities there. We were one of the first wind farms in North America, and we were one of the first developers of wind in North America. So we've done our part, and we will continue to do our part. We have some research going on now at our wind farm with wind hydrogen projects, and I think if the project works out, we'll be a world-class leader in that area. And I guess people are saying, well, why aren't you talking your wind hydrogen project? I'm allowing the people to get their work done, and we'll register the IP before we make any announcements, and we'll take economic advantage there.
Right. I guess if we can just go maybe through the climate change document and just sort of talk about some of the things in it that are those practical things. And I think maybe the most interesting part of the document is the government leading by example section, because if you look at what's planned, the most dramatic changes are under the government leading by example, because you have full control over that. So can you just maybe talk about some of the things like energy audits or changing the way you use transportation, or some of the more practical things you're doing within government?
Yeah, well, one of the things we're trying to do right now is go with LEED certification. We're trying to institute that in the province here. It does cost a lot of money to go LEED, but it's an area we have to go with our public buildings, I believe.
And would that involve new construction, or are you looking at going retroactively and retrofitting buildings as well?
Any retrofitting or any new building we're developing, it has to be, I'm looking at a LEED certification in that area. Now, it's expensive, and it's something that has to get through budget cabinet and has to be approved by the legislature, and I think we should be doing it, and I'm promoting that in terms. We're also working with our forestry sector there to say, a biomass in each facility, on a BTU basis. We're working towards that. We're working towards our equipment to be highly efficient, plus the lowest transmitters or polluters available. We have instituted policies that said, any new equipment purchased by the government must be energy efficient, plus a very low emissions. So we're doing all of those areas to demonstrate to the public that it can be done. We're looking at demonstration projects. We have energy audits right now. We've conducted almost 1,000 of them right now in Prince Edward Island. People have taken advantage of the program.
And these are residential as well as government.
Yeah, well, we're moving into industrial audits right now with our utility, and seeing how we can reduce their cost or what we can do to reduce their emission control. One project I'm extremely ecstatic about is the Cavendish Farms one. We do have sort of a cap and trade program right now in Prince Edward Island. Anybody that uses bunker C oil or heavy crude oil in their facilities, we charge them a per gallon per liter rate on how much they use a year. Okay. And the Cavendish Farms, they were paying us thousands and thousands of dollars in terms of that levy. The Cavendish Farms went out and made a biogas plant, and not just because to get rid of the cost in terms of what they had to pay us for their oil levy. It also is cost beneficial for them to get off, and they've reduced their CO2 emissions. They have reduced their cost in terms of importing oil and using it there, and they're using products our farmers' byproducts and generating energy from it. So we work with that big producer. We worked, like I said, with the freezer plants, when we're working with other companies in order to see how we can reduce it. And that's the kind of leadership we're taking as a province.
I think one of the interesting comments David Bergmark, the architect, made about design and sustainability is that one of the problems with climate change is that it's non-linear. So it's not just going to happen gradually, it's going to happen suddenly. And as one thing happens, then it's going to stimulate more things and it's going to cascade. But the flip side, the good part of that sort of non-linear system is that when I hear from you, for example, that someone is storing energy in a potato barn or in a freezer, I'll go and tell people about that. And sort of the sustainable design is non-linear too. So if one person sees something, they think, oh, I could do that too. And sort of leading by example actually does have a non-linear benefit.
Yeah,
as well.
it does. And some of these technologies are new, and a lot of first out of the post technologies fail. So it's a hard adoption rate. Like computers were sitting in the back rooms until Lotus 1, 2, 3 came out, and and then it just went like a rocket. People had message machines all the time, and when BlackBerry introduced the email system, all in that, it just went like a rocket too. So I see that sort of approach happening. When we introduce some of these technologies and people adapt to them quick, we can go up the curve. Pretty fast.
And I mean, there is a sort of a conventional wisdom, and I don't think it's actually true, is that islanders are slow to adopt new technologies. But when you actually look at, historically, telephone, telegraph, internet, I mean, there is maybe some initial suspicion, but once it takes off here like maybe nowhere else.
And it's going to take off here. Our energy audit program was something that started out slow. Once people got word of mouth get out there, although we advertised it, it didn't start working until we got the first 10 people to do it, and those 10 people talk to 10 people. We have a great community here of communicating through rumors, and if we can communicate through that, we'll see the acceleration. And the energy efficiency audits started out slow, and all of a sudden 1 month it just jumped, and another month jumped again, and it's working quite well for us.
So that Office of Energy Efficiency, and I talked with Mike Proud about that earlier in the week. Can you just talk a little bit about the role of that organization and what role it plays in the broader strategy?
Well, the Office of Energy Efficiency's job is to go out and to find areas that we can reduce our power demand, or we can reduce our heating demand, and reduce the cost to both homeowners and businesses. And we're very active in that. And that's an area PEI should be really proud of, because in the 70s we used to have the energy efficiency audit bus that went around and audited companies. It's funny, we've come full cycle again, and we're bringing that sort of a technology back to go out again and to re-update companies throughout PEI, and it's going to kick in, and people are starting to say, yes, I remember 20 years ago when I had this done. It's time to have it done again and retrofit my place to the new technologies that are available. And that's coming about. So we do have it's great here in PEI, because people say, yeah, I've participated in programs in the past, in the 70s. We had a lot of good thinking people in the 70s that saw climate change and they saw energy alternatives, and they instituted some of the things that today we're taking tremendous advantage of.
Well, I think the other point that both Andy Wells and David Bergmark made was that if you don't have to go back too many generations to find people who heated their houses with wood. Here, we're much closer to that.
Yeah.
And that, for a long time, let's say in the 60s and 70s, that was seen as old technology, out of date. We got to get out of that. We got to start using oil, because that's the modern thing. Ironically, we're coming back to the point where heating with wood is got a lot of benefits.
Oh, and what has happened there, heating, I remember myself, I used to heat with wood, and then, bringing in the wood and logs and everything, all the work to it, you looked at the oil and you said, throw that out and go back to oil. But you see the new technologies that's coming out today, the new burners today, and you got these pellet stoves that are highly efficient. They run themselves, they're low maintenance, and people are starting to go back and say, I did it in the past, it was labor intensive, work intensive, a lot of nuisance, but the new technology that's out there now takes that nuisance out of it, and people are moving back to it. It's great, and it's one of these areas where it's sustainable, it provides jobs in Prince Edward Island, it uses our resources in Prince Edward Island, and it's a cycle that we can get going instead of just shipping all our money to either, to the Middle East,
Right.
And just pumping oil over here and burning oil and generating our wealth someplace else or sending our wealth someplace else. Right. This is an area where we can both keep it here and be efficient at doing it also.
Now, you touched on the whole wind issue a couple of times. Maybe we can just talk about that in more detail for a second. I guess you go back again to the 1970s, and that's when the initial interest in wind was here. And that wind test site at North Cape has been going along there in one form or another. Like, it arguably is the most successful byproduct of the last energy crisis. And I think in the last, let's say, 5 to 7 years, you might say, there's been a commercialization of that. So it's sort of moved from the lab, let's say, into production. Can you just talk about sort of that evolution and where we've been and where we're heading in terms of wind infrastructure?
Well, there's a number of islanders deserve a lot of credit in wind. I just come to mind every time I think of wind is, Malcolm Lodge, tremendous person that stayed with it, when most other people would have just walked away from the wind and said, I'm going to go to another career. Malcolm stuck with it, and we're the benefit of his work. A lot of our advantages today are a result of, people like Malcolm Lodge and his colleagues that were around there. And, our wind farm up, we have one on each point of the island, which we hope to catch the wind at the first and then catch it at the other end as she's running through. So,
And that's provincially owned public infrastructure.
We are at the opinion now that, the public has to own a lot of generation, and I believe in it personally, just from a security point of view and from a point of view of our responsibility to reduce greenhouse gases and our responsibility to become more efficient. It's pretty hard for a private sector company that's out for the interest of its shareholders to get involved in that, and that's why I'm saying for generation when the government put up its own wind farms, I was fully supportive of that and saying, it is a great idea.
So how does that work from a economic perspective? The infrastructure is owned by us.
Yeah.
We're generating the electricity from that infrastructure. It's flowing into the grid. Is Maritime Electric essentially then a customer of ours for that electricity?
Oh yeah, we the province of Prince Edward Island has a power purchase agreement with Maritime Electric, and they purchase it and they use that power to supplement their power they purchase from off island, right. And it's working great. Last year alone, wind on Prince Edward Island saved a tremendous amount of fuel, number one, but it also saved islanders a lot of money, because if we would have had to if we didn't have the windmills last year and we had to buy our power at the market rates, we were looking at anywhere at a 10 to 15%, even up to 20% more paying for our power. Right. So the wind farms are paying off.
So the price that we're charging Maritime Electric for that power, that's now cost competitive with other generation sources for that.
It's tremendously cost effective. Right now we're charging Maritime Electric 7.5 cents a kilowatt hour, and right now, especially last year, the cheapest power you could get is anywhere from 10 to 11 cents. So you take that cost differential, and that was a saving direct to the islanders of Prince Edward Island. Wind is very cost effective.
And that 7.5 cents a kilowatt hour then is just coming back into provincial coffers and,
yes.
and allowing either additional development happen or
sure
other things the government does with money. But.
Yeah, our utility or our energy corporation does make a profit. With the second set of wind farms we're doing is we're saying any profit that's made of those wind farms go directly back to Maritime Electric to reduce power rates. I'm a firm believer that if these farms are going to save money, the people that are using it should get the benefit of it. And one of our new policies is that any more wind development, any profit that is made from it will directly go back into reducing the power rates for islanders across there. And we're doing a tremendous job in terms of, we just issued a tender for export. We combined export and domestic, 100 export and 30 megawatts domestic. And why we did that, Peter, was simple, that we thought that going with a 30 tender and a 100 tender at different points in time, the economics of scale is not there. The project's not there. By combining our project with a bigger project, we're basically looking for the export market to bring our costs down for the domestic market.
Now, part of the misunderstanding, I think, about the export market, people see that as being, so why are we generating wind energy here and selling it to rich New Englanders? But I think part of the argument against that is that we can't, those windmills are running all the time. We can't use that energy.
Yeah, I was at a meeting, and they've done polling, nationwide. We're an exporting country. People have no problem exporting oil, no problem exporting wood, no problem, whatever other natural resources we have. Fridges, stoves, cars, they have no problem with any of those exports. It's one of those things that Canadians, and especially Islanders, just say we're not exporting our electricity.
Right.
But it's an issue that, we need at any given time about 140 megawatts of power. That's like a speedometer in your car. We're running out of wood about 140. Okay, that's what we use. We have installed now about 200 megawatts of power. So when we're not using it, we can't store it. That's another thing that everybody's looking at storage. It's not like we just build an oil tank and fill up that tank. It can't be done. Right. It's one of those technology. You lose it, you use it, or you lose it. And that's one of the reasons we're saying, well, we'll export the excess power we're using at any given time, and we'll import when we need it.
Right.
The nicest part Islanders can see is that we have a cable to the mainland, and our percentage of power coming to the island as opposed to leaving to the island is shifting.
Right.
And that's great news. You get reports back from our utility that says, for 5 hours last night, we were putting electricity off the island instead of bringing it in. And that's a tremendous thing that I feel great about. And it brings revenue back to Islanders. But it's a tough one to get over, to tell Islanders that, yes, we are exporting our wind because we can't use it all. But we're getting, the public is becoming very well educated on it, and they're starting to realize, it's one of those resources you can't store in the ground, you can't store in a battery. We're looking at storage facilities where we can store it, but I can assure that we're using as much as possible.
And do you think people would be surprised if they knew how much we're using? I mean, even the numbers you're telling me right now, they seem like an awful lot compared to what I expected.
Oh yeah, we're using a tremendous amount of wind power on Prince Edward Island. We're the highest, I'd venture to say, the highest in the world. Like Denmark's at 20-25%, I'm told, and we're approaching, somewhere 30 on maximum load, and somewhere in 60 to 70% on base load. So we're using a lot. Well, we're using so much that our sister utilities that have to load balance it are getting a little jealous of us.
Right.
They're saying we're not going to load balance you anymore, because as wind develops in other areas, that balance has to occur in their own provinces. And that's another reason, like I'm saying, we have to cooperate here in Canada, especially in the maritime provinces, Atlantic provinces, and with Quebec, because we have a tremendous amount of resources here. And I'm fighting myself to have a maritime generation corporation. Like I'm saying, why do we have to build a coal-fired plant here when our sister province has a tremendous amount of renewable energy? And why aren't we cooperating here instead of everybody having their own facilities, mix of facilities? Like we have the best wind regime. Logically, the windmills should come to PEI.
Right.
Okay. Quebec has hydro, Newfoundland has hydro. We should be maximizing those energy sources and balance them against our wind, and maybe some nuclear. And with
I think the other point I've heard Carl Brothers made is the potential to take our wind and use it to essentially move water uphill.
Oh yes.
And use that as a battery.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal technology. What really happens right now is, the people are saying to move the water back up the dam. Well, if we can say that the wind is blowing now, we don't have to pump the dam.
Right.
Basically, that's essentially storing that energy up there. And Newfoundland and Quebec realizes the potential there of saying, but our issue here in Canada, we're not like some of the states, is we have a tremendous amount of water.
Right.
And it's not like our dam is we're running low of water.
Right.
We always have enough water,
Yeah.
and we'll always have it. They're spilling water a lot of the times because it's overgoing the dam and the dam. And whereas I just came back from last year, I was down, looked at Hoover Dam, and you can see the line is down about 20 or 30 feet, and you say, what's going on there? Well, we're running out of water. We don't know what we're going to do. We'll have this beautiful dam, but no water.
So if we're at, you said we were at 200 megawatts of capacity right now.
Yes.
And that's ideal capacity? Is it? That's, I mean, if the wind was blowing 100% of the time and we were at peak efficiency, we could get 200 megawatts out of the system. Is that what?
Oh yes. Yeah.
So where will we be in 5 years if the plans that you're talking about come together?
For wind?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll be at 500 megawatts.
Okay.
And we'll be exporting at any given time 300 megawatts of wind, and that will bring money back into Prince Edward Island, and it's good money. It's revenue that we use to lower power rates in Prince Edward Island. The more we can export, and to use that export profits to lower our own import profits, sort of thing.
Like, and do we also realize some sort of benefit from sort of being from taking the need? Like if we contribute wind to New England, and as a result New England doesn't have to burn coal, do we get some sort of, not financial benefit, but sort of carbon credit benefit, for lack of a better word?
Well, that's one of the main things. When cap and trade comes in, and it's coming, it has to come. And when cap and trade comes in, we're a firm believer that we're going to be a North American system. I don't think Canada can go cap and trade itself, or the U.S. can go cap and trade itself, but we have to go in sync with them, because a lot of our exports to the States are to the States, I should say, and we have to join their cap and trade, or a joint cap and trade, and it's coming. It's no doubt about it. It's going to be here, and we have a tremendous amount of credits stacking up here with our wind. Hydro is going to. I don't think hydro is going to be a part of it, and therefore our credits are going to be worth more here in Prince Edward Island. So we're going to make additional money with those credits, and we were one of the very few wind developers in North America that we have said in legislation that we own that resource. Right. As Alberta has a right to the oil under the ground, we have a right to the electricity that's blowing in the wind, more or less, and we charge for it, and that charge is then used to lower power rates in Prince Edward Island.
Now, wind is not the only part of the mix, and you touched on biomass, and are there? I mean, the strategy document talks maybe about solar and some other things. Are there other things that you're doing that are not wind related? Yeah,
well, what we're doing, we're preparing a tender right now, a document where I'm going out to proposal calls. I'm listing all our facilities and all our infrastructure in government and saying, here's the schools, here's the hospital, here's the manor, here's what we're going to build, here's what BTUs are needed at these facilities. Right. And one of the first steps we've taken is said, look, any design or redesign, you have to have an area within your school or your hospital or whatever, a pad or an area that we can put a biomass burner there. So that's number one, and any new designs that are being done now, the architects know that has to be in place on the plan. Also, when you're setting up your heating system within the school or within the hospital, within the manor, we need a quick coupler system to hook in these facilities. I'm a firm believer in order for biomass to really work, it has to be convenient, it has to be easy.
So a quick coupler system is what?
Just basically, right now we have a school up west that, it comes in a container. Right. The whole unit comes in a container. Oh, okay. We drop it off instead of,
Instead of all the kids going out and unloading the wood into the school.
Yeah. But, and also, in order to get, it's like one of these technologies. It has to be easy. When you go to the building supervisor, you say, look, your building is prepared. It's been designed to hook right in. Then that building person or buildings maintenance people don't say, okay, I need to get a contractor to change the piping, I need to do this, I need to do that. I'm a firm believer that this technology will take off and be more acceptable. If somebody can say, you will charge me X cents per BTU, right, and okay, I'll give you an agreement. I don't want to do anything else. Right. And the owner of the facility is going to have to show up on site, and containerize it, put it in there. It has to be easy, and flexible. And that's one of the hurdling blocks we have right now, because you go to the building operators and you say, we'd like to put in a unit. Well, I don't have the space. I have to build another section. I have to get permits. I have to get the community, the committee. And, this way it's drop and go sort of technology.
Well, one of the things Mike Proud said is that for 20 years he's been working on the energy file, and really, although there's a technical component to his work, he's in the behavior modification business.
Yeah.
And he said that's a hard job, changing a lot of minds. And if you can do things like that, which basically make it, as you say, sign in the dotted line, something gets dropped in.
Yeah, you don't have to worry.
Right.
And that, see, what happened in the past, we tried it in the past, and, where the janitor had to take care of the facility, or there had to be additional workload passed on to the individual, where they said, okay, with oil, we throw it in a tank, it burns, we don't have to go in that facility. And that's my objective. I said, we have to get to that point in time. It's great to say, we want it, and here's additional duties that you have to do it. Right. No, we want it to, not only in terms of cost, but in terms of workload. We have to be competitive with oil. And with the technologies that are available today, I think we've gone over a lot of the hurdles where, the sticks were getting caught in the augers and things were doing. And that's one of the reasons where we said from now on, no, we're going to buy BTU. You're going to be responsible for the facility, right, the owner. You will have to keep it going, And my vision is to see, and wood chip trucks going up the road, filling up these plants, making sure they're running properly, and leaving. And that's
so when you're talking about buying BTU, I guess the other advantage of that is that if I'm in that, somebody was talking to me about co-op fuels, for example,
yes,
where I buy my oil, and co-op fuels sort of re-envisioning themselves as not as a fuel oil provider, but as an energy
that's
provider.
Right.
And so if let's say I'm in the business of wood right now, and I'm going to respond to an RFP for such and such a school, and I'm going to provide energy to them on a BTU basis. You're suggesting that if in 5 years' time I could start generating hydrogen, then I could just take out my quick coupling wood burner and put in my quick coupling hydrogen burner, and then just continue to be an energy provider in that way.
And that's right. As better technologies comes along, it's like changing an engine in the car.
Right,
just, hey, I got a better, new, efficient engine. Just drive that one out and put a new one in. Or
so on the wood side or the biomass side, presumably we have the supply side of that taken care of, do we, in a sustainable way, or do we have some work to do on that?
We have some work to do on that, and that's why I've asked I have an environmental advisory committee in the department, and I've asked them to say, how many BTUs can we get in a sustainable way on Prince Edward Island? We have a little bit of a challenge here on Prince Edward Island also, where the vast majority of our land is owned by private landowners. And we're going to have to work out with these landowners some sort of contract or some sort of mechanism where the wood chip supplier has contracts with landowners in order to go in and get his supply out of that. But there's a challenge there. It's hard because a lot of people are saying, no, I bought that 100 acres of forest. I don't want it touched. I just want to go out and walk through it. And we're having a challenge there, but we're working with it.
And presumably there's some role for government to play in terms of, like in the same way that you certify organic produce, you almost need to certify wood producers or wood harvesters as sustainable.
That's right.
Because if I have 100 acres, and again, I don't want to think about it, I just want to hire someone to go and sustainably harvest. I need to be able to bank on the fact that the trees are going to come back. So.
Yeah, and that's another thing I've engaged the department. You can get certification, but it costs a lot of money for individuals. I'm trying to get a general certification for the province on our policies that we can say, okay, we're certified as a sustainable development forest, okay, and therefore we do things properly, But in order to do this for each woodlot would be extremely expensive, and I'm trying to convince the powers to be that gives these certifications to say, if we can demonstrate as a government, and our policies, our contracts, our requirements that any BTUs that are burnt in our schools or in our hospitals or anything like that is being developed under this model. Can we get a certification for this system? And we're working on it, and hopefully we can.
So taking a step back one more time and just looking at your role around the cabinet table, if we look at the way that traditionally government makes decisions, on quality of life and number of jobs and GDP and all those sorts of things. Are they now looking to you in terms of the energy and environmental impact side of things as an equal partner yet, or is there a distance to go there? Like if you're looking at such and such a fish plant is going to go here, do you factor in the, it's going to create 50 jobs, but it's going to do this on the environmental side? Is there some work to do there? Or
No. The cabinet and the government are 100% behind this plan, our climate change plan, our energy plan. They realize that a major cost of any business is energy, and it's a major economic driver. And if we don't have affordable, sustainable energy, we're not going to have the jobs in place. So my job has been elevated quite a bit because we have the highest energy cost, and the efficiencies have to be put in place. That I've been tromping the Maritimes and Atlantic Canada and Quebec looking for green, sustainable, affordable power for Prince Edward Island. We realize that we cannot just go out and be the world-class leader and have no economy. Right. We balance that out, and like I said, developers are coming in here with all kinds of ideas and schemes and saying, PEI could be a world-class leader in this area if you go with my project. Right. And I say, great idea, but we have a new criteria here. It has to be balanced against cost. Right. And can you compete with the cost of other projects? And that's challenging our people that are coming to the island now, but they know that policy right now. I have people coming in my office, and the first thing is your project, has to be sustainable, environmentally friendly, but it also, one of the other criteria, it has to be cost effective to us. I cannot go out and ask our companies that generate employment to take on an additional cost that their competitors don't have to at this time. But I can go out, help them be efficient, help them find good, affordable power, or heat, or some sort of alternatives to running their company, and we're getting there. But we are a major player. I know a lot of people say, the Department of Environment's, it sits at the end of the cabinet table. But when you combine our forest, our energy, and our environment together, then it's an economic driver.
So looking forward to December and the Copenhagen conference, I presume PEI doesn't have a seat at that table other than sort of indirectly through Canada. But
yes.
It looks like something may happen or something may not happen. But if you look at the sort of the way that the world is going, we're not too far off on the PEI plan. Maybe the percentages are here and here, and you can argue about the numbers. But do you think when you talk about 75 to 85% by 2050, do you think we're going to get there, or is that too far in the future and too ambitious to be a realistic goal? Or?
We're only going to get there if others are going to go there too. I'm not going to break the economy to get to that objective. Right. But we have to make sure that our partners in Canada and in North America and the world are striving towards that goal. We can get there, but we're not going to bankrupt the province or shut down the province in order to get there. Right. And that's, some people may disagree with that, but we're a very, very tiny player, and our effects can be there. We can show leadership there. We can stand up and say, to those it says this can't work, we have it working. To those it says, these are unrealistic goals, we don't think they are. But we have to be together here in order to achieve it. And we will put it this way, as long as we're ahead of what everybody else is doing, yes, I'm happy. Right. But I'm not going to get so far ahead that we have no economy. It's some people criticize me for that, but I have to be practical here. I have to say, PEI will be ahead of the curve, and we can be proud of that, but we're not going to be so far ahead that we have no economy.
Well, I guess ideal situation, everything comes together, and when we take these steps that are going to have a positive climate change mitigation effect, they increase the economy, because we do become a leader that our energy costs in theory should go down.
Yes.
And then there's that opportunity for the intellectual property export that you talked about.
And that's one of the things in the past we were too free in giving up our ideas. Right. And that's not going to happen anymore. We're going to develop our ideas. We're going to register our IP, because I think a tremendous amount of good intellectual property has left this island, and we didn't protect it in time.
Right.
Some of our wind technology that people are developing and has came here and viewed our sites. We were open to them and free and everything, and and they took it and they didn't return any cash to us. So we're gonna try to protect that in the future, and that's one of the reasons in our prosperity plan we focus on IP and the importance of IP, and that's where the cash is made. And we have projects. From a political point of view, I could be making a nice announcement every month on the advancement of this project and how it's going. I'm not.
Right.
I'm not going to tell people what we're doing until we have it properly done, until we have it registered, and then roll it out. That's for the benefit of islanders and the benefit of the world.